Welcome to the Golden Gems podcast. Today we're taking a deep dive into Richard Pryor, the architect of modern comedic rebellion, how the legendary comedian defined modern confessional stand-up by weaponizing his personal trauma to expose American hypocrisy.
And right away, we have to start with the paradox in that. I mean, today, confessional comedy is almost the default mode.
Right.
You see it everywhere. Comedians like Hannah Gatsby, Bo Burnham, they're mining their own pain, often looking for some kind of catharsis, a narrative of recovery.
But the sources we've looked at are so clear on this. When Pryor invented this, catharsis was not the goal. It wasn't a recovery program.
Not all.
He was performing a kind of self-immolation. He invented this whole mode as a demolition tactic.
Yeah.
He wanted to blow up every single structure of race and performance in America.
Absolutely. He wasn't building a safe space. He was trying to expose the fundamental rot that he saw just under the surface of everything.
And the cost of that invention was just immense.
It was terrifyingly high. It cost him a career that was worth millions, a body that was literally engulfed in flames, and then the cruelest irony of all.
Multiple sclerosis.
Multiple sclerosis, yeah. For a master of rhythm and speech to have his voice, his physical presence stolen from him, it's just devastating.
So to really understand that artistry, that self-destructive genius, we have to go back to the beginning, back to Peoria, Illinois.
Right.
He was born in 1940, not just into poverty, but into what one source calls the epicenter of its illicit underbelly.
And that's not just a colorful phrase. I mean, the brothel his grandmother ran, that was his classroom. It was his entire world.
His whole genealogical foundation was shaped there.
Exactly. You're looking at a post-Reconstruction reality. His mother, Gertrude, was a prostitute. His father, Leroy, a pimp.
Right.
And running the whole thing was the matriarch, Marie Carter, who ruled with, as the sources say, a belt and a terrifying pragmatism.
So is this incredibly chaotic home that's also a high-stakes ecosystem? It's a laboratory?
A laboratory for reading power dynamics. And that's where you find this one detail that I think is just, it's foundational.
What's that?
By the time he was 7 years old, he had learned, as a survival mechanism, to identify a John's profession by the rhythm of his knock.
Wow.
Think about that. That level of sociological auditing, just to stay safe.
So he knew who was at the door just by the sound.
He knew everything. A cop's knock was 3 sharp raps. Authoritative, demanding, but a married man. His was 1 knock, then silence.
The sound of guilt.
The sound of guilt and discretion. He learned to spot hypocrisy before he could even tie his own shoes.
And that ability, that deep ingrained radar for the masks people wear, that becomes the engine for everything later.
It's the whole engine. He knew what people pretended not to see.
And yet when he first gets to New York in the early 60s, he completely buries all of that.
Oh, completely. He becomes the safe, palatable Negro comedian.
A Bill Cosby clone.
A polished clone of Bill Cosby, yeah. He's in the sharp suits telling gentle anecdotes on Ed Sullivan. And he's successful, but the sources all say he was spiritually hollow. He was just suffocating under that mask of acceptability.
Which leads us directly to the great fracture. The big one. Las Vegas, 1967.
And this wasn't some slow, creative evolution. This was a spontaneous combustion. He's on stage at the Aladdin Hotel in front of a room of drowsy gamblers doing that clean act.
That same act he hated.
The same one. And the sources say he felt the falseness of it, like physically constricting his throat. So he just stops. He leans into the mic and he asks this detonating question.
What the fuck am I doing here?
What the fuck am I doing here? And then an act of complete artistic suicide. He places the mic down on the stage gently, like it's a resignation letter, and he walks straight for the employees-only exit.
And that walk, what was it, 22 steps?
22 steps. And the writer points out that walk was longer than any joke he had told in the last 5 years.
So after he basically buys his soul back with that one act, where does he go?
He retreats. He goes to Berkeley, California, and just immerses himself in the counterculture and the Black Power movement.
He's meeting figures like Huey P. Newton.
Exactly. He's not just, hanging out. He's seeking an intellectual foundation for his rage. And he realizes that all those characters he used to just observe, the winos, the junkies, they were human beings to be inhabited, not mocked.
So he drops the suit.
He drops the suit and comes back as this raw, profane truth teller.
And that rebirth kicks off his imperial phase, roughly 1974 to 82. This is where he doesn't just break the rules of stand-up, he burns the rule book and writes a new one.
And we have to look at the methods he used. Take that Nigger's Crazy in 74.
The title alone.
The title was a weapon, absolutely. But the real innovation was inside. He discovered what one critic called the anthropomorphism of pain.
Okay, let's unpack that. Anthropomorphism of pain. It sounds like he wasn't just telling jokes about police brutality.
He wasn't telling jokes about it, he was embodying the entire thing. His body became the stage, the courtroom, the crime scene. He didn't just critique the cop. He became the cop.
And the victim.
And the victim, and the scared bystander, sometimes all in the same breath. He forced the audience to feel the fear.
He expands on that almost immediately with Bicentennial Nigger in 1976.
Yeah.
That title coming out during the American Bicentennial.
Mm-hmm.
It's just brilliant provocation.
And he creates this persona of a centuries-old black man. So the whole performance becomes this living archive, a witness to the grotesque pageant of slavery and Jim Crow.
Forcing the audience to participate in the history they'd rather forget.
He made them complicit, yes.
But the absolute peak of this has to be Live in Concert from 1979. Why is this one called the Citizen Kane of comedy films?
I think it's the vulnerability combined with the absolute physical command. The heart attack bit is the perfect example. He doesn't just tell you he had a heart attack, he performs it. He's on the floor, he's enacting the complete betrayal of his own body. He turned his own mortality into this new, invincible kind of comedy.
Which makes the follow-up, Live on the Sunset Strip in '82, so much more fraught. Because that special is haunted by the fire.
He had no choice but to address it, and he does, head on. He turns that horrific drug-fueled incident into comedy. He's joking about how fast he ran down the street while he was burning.
The absurdity of it.
The pure absurdity, but the tension in that special. It's almost unbearable, and it culminates in that moment at the end where he just lights a match on stage.
It's terrifying.
A reminder that he was always on the edge. And speaking of that, we should probably mention Blue Collar, the film.
From '78.
Right.
While he was making millions from movies like Stir Crazy,
Right.
Blue Collar was where you saw that same raw, dramatic intensity, that paranoia.
And that edge he lived on became devastatingly real on June 9th, 1980. This wasn't a metaphor anymore.
No, this was freebasing cocaine and Ronson lighter fluid, a physical tragedy.
The details are just harrowing. He becomes a Human Torch. He's running down Parthenia Street. The fire itself lasted, what, 90 seconds?
90 seconds. But it resulted in 50% third-degree char. I mean, the reports are just awful.
And the quote from after. It might be the darkest punchline of his entire life. He wakes up in the hospital, he's wrapped head to toe in gauze, and he asks the nurse, "Did I make it?"
She thinks he means, did I survive?
Of course. But he didn't. He meant the punchline. His entire life was so structured around the joke that it actually superseded his will to live.
That's staggering. And the cruelty just keeps compounding with the second tragedy, the MS diagnosis in 1986.
For a man whose genius was so rooted in physicality, the strut, the mimicry, the rubber face, to lose motor control.
It's the definition of a cruel irony. It stripped him of his main instrument.
It did. But he kept performing, even from a wheelchair. He was still finding the absurdity in the darkness right up to the end.
So when we look at the big picture, Pryor is. He's seen as the God cell, the original mutation that made all of this modern comedic rebellion possible.
The lineage is undeniable. Every serious, uncompromising comedian today is working in some way from his blueprint.
Like Dave Chappelle, his walk away from Comedy Central in 2005.
It's a direct echo. It's a citation of Pryor's 1967 walkout at the Aladdin.
But is it really the same? I mean, Pryor walked away from a $40,000 gig. Chappelle walked away from $50 million. Is that a direct parallel, or is it more symbolic?
I'd say it's symbolic, but the philosophical core is identical.
Yeah.
Both men chose what the source calls long-term creative sovereignty over short-term money.
Right.
They looked at the machine trying to contain them, and they just said no. Pryor created the template for that.
You can see that template today in someone like Katt Williams. That whole style of his, that intense forensic auditing of the industry.
That's Pryor's methodology. That's the idea that comedy is journalism when the journalists are too scared to tell the truth. Williams carries that mandate. He brings the receipts.
And Patrice O'Neal, too.
Oh, absolutely. Patrice codified Pryor's Berkeley rebirth into a whole philosophy. The idea of embracing unlikability as artistic integrity, refusing to pay the tax of being palatable.
The ultimate contrast there, though, is Eddie Murphy.
Right. Murphy inherited all of Pryor's raw power, the charisma. He became the biggest star on the planet. But when the industry offered him $20 million for another nutty professor,
He took the money.
he took the money. Pryor walked away from wealth to find his voice. Murphy eventually chose to sell his voice back. Pryor's model only works if you're willing to lose everything for the truth.
And speaking of that truth, His legacy is being massively reevaluated right now in 2025.
It is. The archival mobilization has been huge. Rhino Records put out that definitive 7 LP box set, I Hope I'm Funny. It really cements him as a modernist philosopher, not just a comedian.
But that also brings up some really thorny ethical challenges,
Yeah.
like the Comedy Resurrection AI project.
Yeah, that's a tough one. They're using advanced AI to clone his voice, to have him comment on modern issues like cancel culture. And it's a technical marvel, I guess, but it proves a point.
Which is?
You can clone the sound, but you can't code the pain. The soul is just, it's not there.
And the biopic is finally happening. Not as a movie, but as a 10-part limited series for Amazon.
Which feels right. A 2-hour movie would just be an insult to the sheer chaotic magnitude of his life. 10 hours might actually be enough to capture those years in the brothel.
So this all leads to the final, really difficult question about his whole revolution, doesn't it? Did Pryor's confessional style actually liberate comedy? Or did he just give the industry a more efficient extraction system?
That's the question, and I think there's a strong argument for the latter.
What does that extraction system look like today?
It looks like comedians voluntarily packaging their trauma, their depression, their addiction, their abuse, and handing it over to a streamer in 4K. They brand it as authenticity, as vulnerability.
So Pryor thought he was teaching comedians to be free.
And instead, he might have just taught the vampires where to bite. He gave them a roadmap for turning packaged suffering into high-end entertainment.
And that central tension is why his alchemy has never been matched. He took the absolute ugliest parts of the American experience, racism, violence, addiction, and turned them into this gold that was just profoundly, unflinchingly true.
Richard Pryor walked into the darkness, lit a match, and invited us to warm our hands by the fire. But did we ever pay the real cost of admission, or did we just watch him burn and call it comedy?
Thank you for listening to the Golden Gems podcast. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep celebrating the power of uncompromising voices.